Good morning, everyone. Again, apologies for the poor start to this, and we have got Clair Brown from CQC with us today, and we have had a raft of questions, some of which can be answered, some of which cannot. But the main theme is navigating international employment, the checks and documentation with the regulator CQC, who you will all be well aware of. And I think one of you may have, or one or two of you rather, may have some questions to ask yourselves. And we've also had questions sent in to Dudley and myself, and you're very welcome to put any questions within the chat. So without further ado, Claire, I can pass over to you. If you have your slides, you're very welcome to do them. I have them as well, and as I say, they will be circulated afterwards.
I'll have a go. Thank you. I'll have a go at sharing myself. If I'm not successful, then I'll hand over to yourself. My problem is I have multiple screens, and so it's which one is it going to let me?
It's always a crossover when you're working with Teams and Zooms, and they slightly do two different things, but hopefully.
Yeah, well, I normally work with Teams. Are you able to see? What are you able to see?
We can see the slides on the side, but we can see your slide as well.
Okay, so let's see if I can change the view.
If you go to slideshow at the top.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then you can go to from the beginning, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, hi everybody. I'm Clair Brown. I'm a senior specialist for the Care Quality Commission. I've been in regulation about 20 plus years, and before then my professional background was a nurse. So I've been asked to talk to you today about modern slavery and unethical international recruitment. So as we know, and we all appreciate, and CQC is very much of this view, that the international worker is highly valuable and a very important part of the UK's health and social care workforce. They bring a lot to the industry, and we know are very valued, and the people who receive their care from them are incredibly appreciative of it. International recruitment in itself is not a risk that leads to modern slavery. It's how those staff are treated and the steps obviously that are taken to actually lead them to actually being exploited, given taking advantage of their vulnerabilities and also their situation that they're in. Late last year, in November last year, CQC published a regulatory policy position on modern slavery and unethical international recruitment. And this runs alongside our modern slavery statement. The modern slavery statement is very much a statement about CQC being an organisation and making sure that our processes are free from modern slavery, where the policy position is very much our view and our position as a regulator on modern slavery and unethical international recruitment practices. We know, obviously, that there is a nationwide shortage of staff within the industry, and that there has been an impact with the changes to the immigration visas. And this in turn seems to have introduced new areas of concern and an increased risk of the mistreatment of both existing workforce and international staff that are still being recruited. This is a risk then, an increased risk of the potential of modern slavery and unethical international recruitment practices. All of these we know can be present in the health and social care settings. And this is where then it becomes relevant to CQC, because it impacts on the care that's being provided and the welfare of people that are using the service. But the victims can be staff that are already working in the service, but also there are times when victims can be people that are using the service. So for CQC, practices which include modern slavery and exploitation of the workforce is not compatible with our values and our behaviours. And we support the government's objective to eradicate modern slavery and human trafficking. Our purpose is to ensure that health and care services provide people with safe, high quality care, and to encourage those services to improve. We also align our methodology and our policies and our practices and our values to the Human Rights Act. So this means care should be delivered so that it respects people's human rights, does not pose expose people to risk of abuse and harm or improper treatment, and also protects people from the risk of harm. What we've seen, and there have been some studies more recently that actually informs us that how providers treat their staff actually replicates through in their ethics and how then the care is delivered or provided. So where we see staff are being poorly treated, it's more likely that the quality of care will be poor. And that's not actually saying that that is the fault of the people that are being exploited. It's about the ethics and the ethos of the organisation that's providing that service. So for CQC, we will use our powers and take regulatory action, and including enforcement action against providers where we identify the risk of harm and breaches of our regulations. And it's important there that I emphasise it's the Health and Social Care Act and its associated regulations. That's the only legislation we can take action under. We have our new assessment framework, which will allow us to routinely assess how providers are managing risks relating to modern slavery, and that they are ensuring the well-being of internationally recruited staff. What we are expecting to see now going forward is that policies, particularly safeguarding policies and procedures that are within a service, actually provide clear guidance and support for staff to follow when they identify modern slavery. What we're very aware of is many of our providers are in a prime position to identify victims of modern slavery. I know we are predominantly adult social care on this call, but it can be that quite often victims will avoid or won't be allowed to go to a GP to get medical treatment. So because when they attend frequently, then they can easily be identified as being at risk. So therefore they may go to a walk-in centre to get the medical treatment that they need. Termination centres is also another area which is prime for identifying potential victims. So staff that work there need to be able to know what their role and their responsibility is and how to report that. So that what we also expect obviously is to see safe and thorough and effective recruitment processes that prevent modern slavery, and also clear processes for when providers are using recruitment agencies. Would strongly recommend that the ethical recruitment agency list published by the government is used, because they've been checked and endorsed, but also then that the provider is assured themselves that the agency is doing all those recruitment checks to the standard that they would expect them to do. So what is CQC's remit? What's very clear to us is modern slavery and unethical international recruitment practices are present in all sectors that we regulate. And we see different issues coming up in different sectors. But it is fair to say we are seeing a lot of concerns being raised within adult social care and particularly domiciliary care. Now, CQC does not have the power to investigate, assess, or inspect concerns relating to modern slavery, immigration and visas, and international recruitment. What we do have the powers to do, and what we will do, is we will make referrals and share information with relevant partner agencies, such as the Home Office, UK Visa and Immigration, Gangmasters, Labour Abuse Authority, the police. So whenever we see that we have information of concern, that's what we will do. But we will also look at that information and make an assessment of that against the Health and Social Care Act and its regulations. And as you all know, these predominantly would cover in this area sort of Reg 19 and Schedule 3, Regulation 18, 17 and 12, but it doesn't exclude others. We'll make an assessment of the risk and determine if there is actually a need for CQC to do a regulatory response. Now, regulatory response could be that we start an assessment, could be that we undertake a site visit, it could be working with those partner agencies to share information and evidence that may enable us to take action, even maybe enforcement action. We've been developing a framework to help us assess that risk when we are notified, particularly around when licenses are being suspended and revoked. And we assess those risks in relation to the people who are using the service, the viability of the business model to continue to be able to meet the care needs of those people, and also any risks to people being employed. It is often a multi-agency approach where we work with other government bodies to identify and manage those risks. So what is modern slavery? Modern slavery is defined as the recruitment, movement, harbouring or receiving of children, women or men through the use of force, coercion, abuse of vulnerability, deception or other means for the purpose of exploitation. Now, under the Modern Slavery Act 2015, it is a criminal offence to knowingly or to be in a position where you should know that a person is being held in a position of slavery, servitude, forced or compulsory labour, or facilitating their travel to with the intention of exploiting them. Now, what I'm very keen to always when I talk is to say this does not only relate to people who come from overseas. There have been some cases over the last few years where people who were UK based were exploited, people who were vulnerable due to learning disabilities and autism, where they were forced to live in a cellar. Another one was forced to live in a garden shed, and then they were beaten, forced into hard labour. And it was many, many years before it was identified and these people got to a place of safety, and those that were accountable were prosecuted, but they were prosecuted. That doesn't necessarily mean that was within the health and care sector, but it just is an example that it can happen to anybody. And the next 3 slides, this slide and the next 2, help demonstrate this. These are visual aids that help us understand. This one is that there's no one single type of modern slavery. So labour exploitation, the top 4 until recently was car washes, agriculture, construction and nail bars. And sadly now care has moved into the top 5. Sexual exploitation is obviously when people are forced into working in the sex industry. They may be drugged and locked in rooms to make them undertake those acts and work in that industry. Quite often there is crime where victims are forced or coerced into criminal activities. This can even include arranged marriages, so people can then get access to the immigration system. Violence, the drug industry, where you see those reports of where rented houses are converted into cannabis farms, and quite often there's a single person there caring for everything. They are often victims of modern slavery. Domestic servitude is one that is less frequently heard about, where somebody is forced to work in a household, live there, have all their documents taken away, often not paid, they're not allowed to leave. They can be beaten and controlled if they try and leave or complain, and they are forced then to carry out all of the domestic duties, care for the children, and it's quite a harrowing situation for them because nobody knows or sees that they are there. Organ harvesting, alarmingly, is another area where victims' organs are harvested. That could be as blood as well, or eggs for human fertility. And people can be either coerced into doing that because of their situation, or actually there are times when people think they're going for a job and find that they wake up having been drugged in a makeshift hospital and have had a surgical procedure. This slide shows that there's no one type of victim. People find themselves being exploited for a whole range of different reasons. They can be highly educated people, very clever, but because of a number of events or the circumstances that have happened, they find themselves where they're in a situation where somebody can take control of their lives. Sometimes they don't even recognize that they are a victim of exploitation. They believe the person is their friend and their friend is just trying to help them, and therefore that they have got so embedded in that way of life or the events that are happening. And this slide shows that there's no one single type of offender. As we heard about a family setting with domestic servitude, it could be an organisation, it can be a couple, it can be a single person. But what is scary and what we do see and why it's really alarming within the health and care sector is we have victims of exploitation then caring for the most vulnerable people in our society, and that makes those people potentially at risk, because we can end up, and it is well reported that people become alpha victims, where as a way of self-protection, so that they are less likely to be beaten, punished, and forced to do other things that they don't want to do, they take on part of that role where they will manage other victims and they will control them. And so that makes their life easier. They may not probably do not like what they are doing, but their life then slightly improves. But it means people are willing to do almost anything in that situation to survive. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about the Home Office UK visa sponsor license, and as we know, they have the powers and the authority to suspend and revoke that sponsor license. So I just wanted to give you a very basic overview of the process, a visual aid on that. So when a decision is made to suspend that sponsor license, the provider, the license holder, is given 20 working days to make representations against that suspension. The UKVI then have 20 working days to make to consider that representations and make a decision. Now, I am aware of some cases where it's taken much longer than that to make that decision. I'm also very aware that most of you are familiar with CQC's enforcement processes, where there is an appeal stage after our representations, which goes to tribunal. But for the Home Office, there isn't. It ends here. So once the decision has been made, and if that decision is to revoke the license, it can obviously also be to reinstate the license. But if it is to be revoked, then the migrant workers are all written to by the Home Office individually, and they are given 60 calendar days to either find a new sponsor or to leave the UK. So we have seen and start to identify a number of indicators of exploitation, and these include debt bondage. So this can be having to pay for their visa. People are being charged £15,000-20,000 for their visa, when actually they are only entitled, sponsor licensee is only entitled to recoup their costs. They are providing staff to third parties, so acting as a recruitment agency. Salary underpayment, people are either not being paid the minimum wage or they're not being paid the salary that they have declared to the Home Office they will be paying. Staff are not getting the hours that they have been has been agreed with the Home Office that they will work, but also we see the other extreme where staff are being forced to work excessive hours and not being paid for those. More recently, what we're seeing is people are paying for their visas coming over only to find that there's no job or no work for them. But also another one where people are turning up at the company that they believe has employed them to find that actually that employer knows nothing about them. They haven't sponsored them. So there's been some false use of an organisation's identity. There's movement of staff between locations or businesses. As we know, the Home Office are quite strict with their notifications and the requirements that if a member of staff is to work at a different location within your business, that they need to be notified. We're seeing unlawful terms and conditions of employment, very much as was exposed on the BBC Panorama programme just before Christmas, where there's clauses in there for people having to pay £15,000 if they leave within the 5 years, those types of things. Very much that people are not able to speak up. Threats of the sponsor license being taken away. So what we're saying is that the visa is being, not sponsor license being taken away, the visa being taken away is being weaponized as a way of aiding all of these controlling and coercive behaviours. And quite often the tied accommodation is not suitable, or it's shared and set up in such a way that people are unable to leave, or and also people are unable to leave employment. So Skills for Care have produced a toolkit on recruitment practices, and it's a fabulous tool, and it's a really good guide aimed at providers for helping providers to actually comply with Regulation 19 requirements about employing fit and proper persons, about enabling the gathering of satisfactory evidence, so that you can demonstrate that during an inspection, an assessment, that you have complied with Reg 19. It is a really, really good tool, and would strongly recommend accessing it if you haven't already. So how to make a modern slavery referral. If somebody is at risk of immediate harm, then always just call the police on 999. If you want to make a modern slavery referral as a member of the public, then there is the helpline number that is on the screen. You can also make a report. There is a web form that is run and managed by Unseen UK, or Unseen UK also do an app which gives all of the indicators of modern slavery on there, but also there is the link there to then the web form to enable you to report concerns of modern slavery. Also, if you need to make a referral of concerns and it relates to somebody maybe who is being exploited via their visa or immigration, then there's the link here to the UK VI and contacts, and also you can, excuse me, sorry, report to the Home Office Immigration Enforcement Hotline. And I think for the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority, their helpline asks that you leave contact details and they will call you back. And they have this list of guidance that they ask that you're of information that if you've got it, you're able to provide them, or you can submit it all in an email to them. And I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you for that. I think it was quite comprehensive. I think you can imagine, as being a regulator, there's been a lot of very interesting thoughts, questions, and really trying to find out where CQC stand here, because there's so much things, as we know, in the media. The government recently has mentioned things around family members, or the fact that family members may not be able to bring dependents in. There's a raft of, as you mentioned, people coming into the country, not having work. And I think the final element, I think, which everyone wants to understand is where and employers or providers, what happens to them, for example, if CQC come for an inspection, where they stand, what they have to do, what things they have to show. And it's just understanding that for me personally, and I'm sure you'll share the same, is that if you recruit anyone or employ anyone, there are certain standards that you should be doing anyway. And I think it's a reminder of that. Just because someone's coming from overseas is no different from someone being here. But I think it's actually hearing what I think people are nervous when CQC come around. What are they going to be looking at or looking for is probably some of the areas they're probably very concerned about.
So for CQC, we will, as always, our legislation has not changed. So the recruitment requirements are very much the same as they have always been, to be able to demonstrate that a thorough recruitment process has been undertaken to verify that person is fit and proper and suitable to work and provide those care needs. As always, there is and probably I would say there'll probably be a little more focus on with the international worker, would be asking the provider what have they done to assure themselves and assess competencies so that the people have the right skills to be able to meet those care needs. But also, what support are they putting in place to help somebody integrate into the community and the care industry so that they feel valued and supported, because that then in turn reflects on how care is provided, because it shows the ethos of that company, that organisation. We are looking at very much, particularly at the registration stage, because the government announcement in December, which I think is fair to say was news to CQC as well, that the requirement to be registered with CQC before you can obtain the sponsor licence to use the skilled care worker. We are going to be looking at our framework, our assessment for applications, and we will be looking at business models to be assured that they are safe. We are seeing a number of business models where the percentage of the workforce that will be on visas is very, very high, sort of 80 to 100%. And when it's so easy for the Home Office to remove that sponsor license, then we're assessing that as a potential risk. We would then be asking, what's your contingency plan? And I would be quite honest to say it's not necessarily robust enough to say, well, I'll use the local agency, because when we're seeing a workforce of 200 potentially that are going to lose their visas or need to move to another employer, a local agency is probably not going to be able to provide that number of workers at such short notice. So it's about having proper contingency plans to do if the workforce was to leave. And I think any good business provider always has some form of contingency plan for a turnover of staff. It would just be about taking it to that next level, that next step.
Thank you for that.
Anything else?
I mean, it's quite interesting. So we got people to register. I know there was a slight glitch in the actual link. But of the people that registered and then what it's shown in the things I've looked at, it's shown and the feedback on a poll is that the people that are dealing with people who are compliant from overseas, 75% of those were the managers who were dealing with it, which is quite interesting, because in this space, and the thing that we found is that you're dealing with an area where you may not be the expert. So, but a lot of the people who are dealing with it are the managers still. So sometimes it's getting a reference, for example, to an outside party, so be it a lawyer or someone with more expertise. And well, no, the Home Offices aren't here, so and you're not the Home Office.
No.
But and what's happening in the news at the moment is that there are a lot of suspensions on licenses. So bearing that in mind, and CQC Home Office, I know you're the link to it, and going forward, I guess there is a big nervousness on getting it wrong, and will that then affect their rating as well, considering with all what's going forward? And I know it's a loaded question, but it's also something that I think a lot of the concerns I get all the time.
Well, as you know, CQC is moving its new assessment that it's launching, the single assessment framework, and the indicators of risk there, obviously how that is mapped out going forward is there can be single things that could cause a high peak in a risk score. But I think on the whole, excuse me, obviously the scoring and how that is assessed is all aggregated and goes through a number of checks before a final rating is issued. So there's a number of safety checks in there. What's always key and important is being open and transparent with the Commission, and sharing with them what you know. We have lots of conversations, and with cases where we've had conversations with providers where they are currently suspended, and we're looking for those assurances that care can be safely provided, and that they've got those safety measures in place to make sure the care is delivered, then how a provider engages with us and reassures us and gives us actual evidence of what's in place, then that actually goes a long way to influencing our judgments and our decisions. When we can see barriers going up and defensiveness, and we're trying to be, it's not unusual for providers to tell us that it's this is routine, don't worry, it's nothing to worry about, this just happens. And those conversations have taken place, so I feel quite happy saying that. Then we feel slightly differently and slightly anxious about that, because then it makes you think that something's being hidden, and it makes us want to ask more questions. So our inspectors are very good at asking the right questions to get the information that we need, and if there is if there's not an open response to that, then that causes us to worry. So we would look at it further. I think that's fair to say in those circumstances. But that is kind of with regulation, it's no different from all of our assessments. Is we will ask the questions, we'll ask to see evidence, and we'll make a judgment about that. But quite often that is all influenced about how open and responsive the provider is, and that we can see that they are proactive and responsive, and that they have plans in place, and they've recognised that there's an issue somewhere and they're already dealing with it. That's a really positive approach. So, and that would be across all of our inspection work.
Okay, thanks. I mean, it's always the case when CQC come, we always have people that come in the room and it's a time for question time and everyone gets a bit nervous. But I don't know what it is. But there is a question in the chat that you may be able to answer, and you've partly answered it. Is regards to sponsor licenses, if they've been revoked, can a contingency please let us know CQC thoughts, I guess, as a viable contingency plan. For example, if an organization has 100 staff and 60 sponsors staff, losing the license is high risk, but currently there is no practical way to mitigate the risk.
So there can be a number of, each business will have their own contingency plan about works for them. The local authorities will always get involved because they have that responsibility for continuity of care. So it may be negotiating with the local authority about whether some of the contracts can be taken on by other companies, or you know, having it. I would say there would be a contingency plan will never have one single action. It will be multifaceted. So you're probably going to have a recruitment campaign. You're going to have, but that takes time. So to see that you've had conversations and there's correspondence from an agency that can provide X number of staff, it may be that those complex care packages that is quite demanding on your resources, that you negotiate that another company takes those over. It can be lots of different things, and there'll be no one right answer that I can say that's the right thing for you to do, because your business, you know it best. But it's about being able to demonstrate why those elements, those of your contingency plan, are right for your business. and how that's going to mitigate that risk.
Thanks for that. I think contingency plans are really important. Demonstrating that, I think, is the most important area with any business you're starting, but especially with any sort of care that you're providing. We did have a hand up. I'm not sure if it's still raised. We have Vivian had her hand up. I'm not sure if she's still there.
I'm still here. Hi, Dudley. Hi, Claire. Just
Hi,
a
Vivian.
question on my part. I know you said that obviously we need to show that we've gone through the employment processes, which is checking references and all of that, and that can be quite limited because of geographical reasons. And I noticed that the WE statements are talking about the embedding of training. So have you got any recommendations in terms of how we can demonstrate that the overseas colleagues that we brought into the business are aligned with the way we want to deliver care? And then the second part of, I've got another question, which sits with where people's licenses have been revoked and those carers are seeking to join other organizations. Is there anything that CQC is looking at in terms of us investigating why it was revoked before we get those people so that we can give you that evidence?
So we work close. I'm going to do the second part first. So we're working closely with the Home Office. So the Home Office notifies CQC when a license is suspended or revoked, and they give us some quite basic information for the reasons as to why it's been revoked or suspended. We are working on, I'm going to be completely open with you here, we're working on a memorandum of understanding with the Home Office so that they are able to give us all of their evidence. And for us then, that evidence we may then be able to use that evidence to determine whether we need to take any action because of you know, that definitely if a provider's values and behaviours are demonstrated that they are include modern slavery, then people who practice those behaviours are not really suitable to be then providing care to people. So we would then need to look at what we can do from our perspective, but everything, as you know, needs to be evidence-based, and we would need to follow all of our processes to be able to do that. Regarding the training, I think it's always going to be, and I don't think it's anything greatly different from what you do with staff that you employ that are UK based. It's about those competency assessments that you undertake. I was an inspector many years ago before I came into this role, and you know, I would see providers that would do a fantastic job and go, I know they've got this training certificate and I know they've got that training certificate, but I'm going to work with them, or I'm going to put that senior carer to work with them and assess them and see if their skills are to the standard that I want care to be delivered in my service, because this is the level that, as providing this care, I want my business to be known for, and they set that remit. So I don't think it's anything different. The immigration paperwork and the references, I appreciate, is challenging, but obviously that's all part of the recruitment process that the staff go through.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, just a point. So one of the things we're finding is there's been a number of whistleblowings around overseas staff per se. And this obviously has gone to CQC and has meant investigations. And part of our struggle that we're finding is how to bridge the gap in terms of cultures. And I don't know if you've got any suggestions, because you know there is a divide, and Dudley and I have had many of these conversations about these divides. So it'll be interesting to see if you've got any suggestions how we can evidence to CQC that before we even get to the point of whistleblowing, that we're obviously trying to get these different groups to merge and work together.
That's a massive question. to be honest, I don't have any solutions there or direct answers. I'll be completely open about that. I do think it's going to be a case of that induction programs that you put in place, that care and support, and it's going to be, I can see, for different groups coming in, because we're seeing workers coming in from all around the world now, that it's going to vary according to the cultures that background that person comes from. It's not going to be straightforward. I wish I had an easy answer for you. I think I do need to say, when CQC doesn't have powers to investigate this exploitation, we're not the right organisation. We have to pass that on. It helps us to know, because if it impacts on the care that's being provided or raises questions over the behaviours of the provider, then, or people working in that organisation, then it helps to know. But please don't just send to CQC. You need to let the Home Office or the police or the gangmasters know, because they're the ones with the powers to investigate, not us.
Thanks for that. I think there is a lot to unpick there in those questions, and thanks for doing your best to answer that, Claire. I speak a lot around DI, and I've spoken with Vivian as well, demonstrating, especially across cultures. I do a lot of work with skills for care as well. So it's something that's a growing space, and people should be very mindful of, especially things like pastoral care and onboarding and inductions as well. There's two questions, one in the chat, and then we're going to go to Mary afterwards, if that's possible. So the question, I think, in the chat, I'm not sure if you had looked at it before. The company is a CQC registration, but not all service users are receiving personal care within the company. Do the international recruits have to directly offer support to those service users getting personal care, or is it acceptable as long as they are working within the umbrella organisation that CQC is registered?
My understanding from the Home Office and the legislation that is coming in is that they have to be providing the regulated activities. So the personal care, if that's the regulated activity you're registered for, that's my understanding, is they have to be providing that. That needs to be the main staple of their work. You can't then have them doing work in the office. I couldn't say whether the Home Office would be okay with there being a cleaning visit put in there, or a lunchtime visit to make a sandwich. I don't know what the Home Office's take it would be on that, and that wouldn't be right for me to say. From the conversations we've had and the potential wording for the amendment to the legislation, does talk about providing the regulated activities.
Thanks for that. Mary's got a question. Her hand's been up there. So Mary,
It
please.
has for a while, Mary. Hi.
Ask away, please.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Claire, you did mention about international workers being exploited. The question I want to ask, some people are brought in by agencies who obviously haven't got the paid monies, but then they come in here, the agencies that brought them haven't got jobs for them. We have a few people ringing up, looking for jobs themselves. Is there any plan from CQC perspective to help them, or what can CQC do to help these sort of international workers that have come in?
So for us, often we've got no jurisdiction over those international workers coming in. So our plan is, when we're aware of it, we will notify the Home Office with as much information as we receive, so that they can take action against the agencies that are bringing the staff in. And I've seen a couple of cases recently where the Home Office have done that. One was a lawyer, and another one was a recruitment company, and they have taken action against them. But for CQC, at this moment in time, we've got no plans for us to be able to intervene to help those workers. There's no way, it doesn't sit within our remit, and that sounds very, very cold, and I'm sorry to say that. We can say we can steer people in the right direction to get help. We make referrals when to those agencies to get them the help, but actually it's not within our remit to actually actively take action against those organisations that are doing this.
Probably the problem is people are fearful or don't know where or to seek the help. And then we spoke about integration because when you were answering one of the questions, you did mention about when you come in, integration. So if somebody have moved from their country to a known land or a new place, and then, with all the promises, they come here, some of them have got no relative, nothing. And then, you just come in and there are no jobs. And some people, have paid money as well, to people. And then you come in, and then, so I know there are agencies or routes where people can whistle blow or ring them up. But then is there a particular agency, people in these situations can obviously contact themselves without fear or being anxious to get some help?
So the details that I put in the presentation are the right agencies to go to. If they don't want to talk to a government body, then I would recommend the unseen contact details, because they are a first responder for modern slavery, but they are also a charity. So and they run the helpline for the government. They've got the contract for that, and I meet with them on quite a regular basis, and they're very passionate about this. And I was sharing with them these the types of scenarios that you've just described, and I've said there is a shift in what is happening, and these are the examples we have seen, and I actually think there is a role for unseen to play in that. So I've made that suggestion to them, and they were going to go and have conversation with the Department of Health and the government to see whether there was something that they could do to help fill that gap. So I've been steering the conversation to those right organisations that can help, and flagging this, because I have, from over the last year, I've seen exactly the changes and the types of things that you've talked about. As part of this work, we have been working with the other agencies, such as the Home Office and Gangmasters and Department of Health and Social Care, and they have done a lot more about publicising abroad and putting information out in multiple languages to advise people of their rights and what they should expect and what is not permitted, so that before they apply. But it's how to reach out and contact people before they start that journey of going to that recruitment agency and thinking, which one shall I choose? And the government does publish their list of ethical recruitment agencies, but we know there's far more than the ones that are on that list. So promoting that, anybody who can promote that and raise awareness about it is it's truly appreciated, because getting that messaging out there. But it has been part of the work that has been going on for the last year.
Thank you very much. I think there are two other questions. I think also, just for everyone to understand, CQC are the regulators as care providers. However, they're working with multiple agencies when it comes to overseas recruitment. I think people should remember that as well. And HMRC are involved now. We're looking at things such as you mentioned, the Home Office, you know, all these sort of departments play a big role in it. So, but I think the reason why I think for everyone, they always go to CQC first because they're the main regulator they usually deal with. I'm not sure who was next, whether it was Delapo first, then Alex. So if I've got someone in front of someone, I apologize. So if I go with Delapo first, who's on my screen, and then we'll follow on by Alex afterwards.
Thank you so much. Now, sorry, Claire, my questions are for you. On hindsight, I would just have thought it would have been good if all stakeholders engaged or we went into this process. You at the CQC, most of us have operated for a very long time. We have complied, we've gone through inspections and all. Suddenly, we had a problem in the sector and the opportunities of overseas recruitment came up, which a lot of us took on. There are those agencies who are operating genuinely. We've got staff, we've got clients, but most of us are falling into problems. In this sector, we've got what we know as variable hours, in the sense that clients come to the hospital, they go hospital discharge, reablement, and the hours are never steady. Now, people got licenses. CQC sort of boxed employers into corners of promising fixed hours, 40 hours a week. You said something the other time about regulated activities. If we have to look at the staff just engaging in regulated activities alone, I don't think the people in the country will have work to do. The sector is that we take on packages. They've got different needs. Regulated activity is not the only need we provide to our clients. They do shopping, they do sitting service, they do everything. And everything still comes under care. So if there's a regulation out there, like you said, I'm not sure that they are just looking at them engaging in regulated activities alone, I think we'll be running into problems. I don't know, Claire, if it's possible for the CQC to work with the Home Office to let them know this sector don't care about the unsteady hours. I call it variable hours because a client will drop, other clients will come in. Sometimes it takes days, it may take a week. Hours fluctuate. Sometimes they do more than the hours, times they do less. And some licenses that have been suspended, what I've just said has become part of the reason of variable hours, that the hours are fluctuating, that the Home Office does not seem to. And I am looking at a situation, it's not as easy as you said it, Claire. Maybe somebody's license is revoked and you go out to recruit. It takes time. We know that we've run into problems in this country where the citizens, the residents, most of them, they are not just ready to work in the sector. We've been there. During the pandemic, we were on the road. All of us, managers, care coordinators, leaving the offices, providing care. So when we come, if a lot of licenses are revoked, I can see a future, not even a future, it's very soon, that this sector will be back to where we started. When people are left in the hospital, nobody to take them on. Right now, everybody in the sector, including myself, we are doing our best. We've made mistakes, that we'll say, not knowing so much about Home Office regulation. Home Office issued licenses to some agencies without visiting them. So a lot of people are just making genuine mistakes that are just coming out to light now. So we as providers are looking at CQC as a partner. So please make a representation to the Home Office to look at people who are duly registered, people who have been inspected, who are complying. Give time. Let us, we are now seeing the guidelines of the things they are doing. Let's now sit and look at things that we can work together on so that we don't crash the dumb care sector. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. So CQC has shared with the Department of Health and the Home Office its concerns about the impact of this change in legislation. As I shared earlier, it was news to CQC as well, and there was a meeting, and our chief exec actually decided he would attend, and he shared and voiced his concerns, because not only does this impact the domiciliary care sector, but we know that it also impacts those sectors, those areas of care that are outside of regulation. So living carers, that's an area. The recruitment agencies where they provide staff to domiciliary care agencies and to care homes, it's a huge area which up until now has used this sponsor license code. And so we have voiced our concerns about the impact it will have, and about the impact of the change of the rule about not being able to bring dependents with you as well, your family with you. We have shared that with the Home Office and with the Department of Health. This has been a government decision. That's my understanding. The government have made this decision. We've voiced our concerns, and we've done as much as we can to flag the impact on this. So the bit I was saying about regulated activities is that's my understanding of what it is going to say in the legislation, but I don't know for definite. But that is the take that I understand, that, or the line that it is going to take. As you know, when we regulate and we come and inspect domiciliary care agencies, we only will look at those care packages where the regulated activities are being provided, because that's where our jurisdiction sits. So we don't go into, if you've got people that are having sort of cleaning visits and shopping visits, we don't assess those as part of our inspection. So we agree, we recognise that it is a risk, but we are regulators of the provision of care, and we have spoken up and voiced our concerns about this, but our ability to drive a change with what the government wants is limited. I think that's fair for me to say. We have done what we can, but yeah, what influence we have is not as big, I think, as people often think. So sorry.
It's a very difficult one, and I think we've got one last
Thank you,
question.
Claire.
We've got one. Thanks for that, Delapo. It was well said as well. We've got one last question with Alex, but what I will say to everyone is that please leave questions in the chat and send them to us. We'll send our email as well. We will be having 3 live sessions, one in North London, one in Southwest London, and one in Southeast London. And hopefully, if it's not Claire herself, we'll be getting CQC to come live on the day, so you'll be able to come in person, maybe ask some more questions regards to that. So please do send us any questions as well. I will, and I'm going to say, stick up for CQC. So please, the notion is that it's been a very fast moving sort of area, and things have been developing, and there have been so many different things that are taking place, which is, as you mentioned, regulation, the notion of someone in the Home Office understanding someone in a domiciliary care, their role is not just about care work, it can be more than just that. So you may be shopping for a client, and if they catch someone shopping and say that your license is revoked for that, it would be quite harsh. So I think there has to be some common sense approach, but as Claire said, it's the actual Home Office itself, and hopefully there'll be some form of understanding at some point. So
if I may just add a point quickly, Dudley, there is where we say that the Home Office will contact people if the license is to be revoked. What is coming through as information is that the people that the Home Office is trying to contact have been moved on from their domicile, if you like. So the address the Home Office may have for them is no longer current. And what some of the providers, social care providers, because they've got these international recruits knocking on their door asking for work, they're actually being the, if you like, the source of help because they've got a human streak, and simply out of, you know, ordinary humanity, they're passing on information to these people. And I know it's very difficult, but I think the Home Office is probably not doing a great job of contacting people. And I think it has to be remembered that many of the people that have come in perhaps come from a country where they don't have a great deal of trust in authority or the police. So they think the first thing that's going to happen to them if they contact a representative body such as the Home Office is they will be deported. And we know that if some of them are deported because of their debt situation, they will simply be put into jail when they get back to wherever they may have come from. And perhaps it doesn't seem to be much of a feature for this government, but a bit more humanity from the Home Office would at times be helpful. And I know, Claire, that you can't influence them in that sense, but we do have the Home Office coming to future meetings. And so, you know, you good people will be able to ask these questions and make these points at those meetings. Thanks.
So Alex, I think we've got a last question, then we're going to just round up with a few bits of information that we're going to share as well. So go ahead, Alex.
Okay, hi, hi everyone. Hi Claire, thank you so much for the insights. It's been very insightful, and thank you so much for that. What she literally said, majority of the things on my mind. But also, I think that, like she said, CQC is our one-on-one contact as care providers, and it makes no sense to me that Home Office do not go to CQC before they approve licenses. I'm now speaking from the perspective of the international recruits. So people have sold their properties all life to come down here and to realize that the organization they're working for is not legit providing the jobs for them, and then they have to seek other recourse. And then they are stated that they can't do more than 20 hours for other organizations and all of those bits and pieces. And then it has to be in the industry that they've been sponsored. My point is, I just think it's looking like a money-making scheme to me for the Home Office, because then a care organization that is just opening is requesting for 400 COSs without contacting the CQC. You are approving of those, and then you put people in mixed up situations that they can't deal with. And we say they should report. I know people personally that reported the organizations, but then they give them 60 days to look for other sponsors, which 2 months is quite a short time, because people are asking for 6 months, experience to work in certain industries. It's just not adding up to me, because now a lot of people are on the streets, homeless, that sold their lives from their home country, and then they have 60 days to get back home. I mean, it's not a question, but it's just a suggestion. If you guys can give the approval, that CQC giving approval to Home Office before people are issued COS, it would make majority of the sense, or it would make life a lot easier for other people, because people, international recruits, especially from Africa, are now on the streets looking for help, and it's not looking okay.
Thank you. I mean, so the change in legislation will mean that the company has to be registered with CQC going forward before the provider can get a sponsor license, but it still doesn't provide safeguards. We are seeing a lot of companies trying to register with CQC and then go dormant, and so then obviously on our system it looks like they're registered because it shows that they are registered, but actually they're in a dormant status. We are working with the Home Office to share that information and work together on making sure that providers that are dormant are not then using their sponsor licenses. So there is work that we are doing to try and take steps to protect people in that way. But it is a growing area, and we are learning more about it all the time. And what is within our gift and our remit, we will do. There was a question in the chat, is why CQC involved if we can't do anything about this? We can advise government, and we do, and there is the risk here to the whole health and care economy and infrastructure here. and CQC does have oversight of that. And it is important, I also think, by CQC being part of the conversations and part of what's going on, is we can feed in from that perspective, as well as all the information we get. We learn a lot about what's going on in the sector, and we can provide that. And engagement sessions like this give us those first-hand experiences that you've shared with us, that we are then able to use to demonstrate the points when we are having those conversations.
Thank you very much. I think that there's some rich information that's been shared. Thanks for joining us, Claire. I know there's people probably still scratching their head, and I think it's, as I mentioned before, a developing space and area. I think people have said that CQC weren't saying enough, and thanks for coming today and giving some clarity on there. I know it may not have helped others, but I think as well as the focus should be that the changes that the government have mentioned aren't yet in place and may not happen till spring. So do bear that in mind. But also as well, has been mentioned today, it's what you do when individuals come here, because there's a lot of individuals who have come into the country, and so making sure that they are not breaching the rules and regulations that have been set out by CQC. It's looking at the pastoral care, it's looking about making sure their records are in place, they're up to date, they can be contacted, and the level of support you're providing for them as well as employees is fit for purpose as well. So I think you must remember that as well. You can only do what you can do on your side when they come here. So make sure you have continuity plans, contingency plans as well, to make sure the staff's well-being and looking out for them is important. I can't say much more than that. And thanks again, Claire, for joining us. We may have a few set of questions that we may send you afterwards. But I think the message that I think we're getting from the providers here is please, 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 when you speak to the Home Office in any shape or form, do share some of the thoughts that we're sort of raising here. So thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Okay, if a couple of points also to perhaps ameliorate the situation. Claire, thank you very much. I mean, we're always grateful for CQC for coming. We appreciate CQC's role, and I'm pretty sure that there is, pressure from the government on all the various departments and operators, regulators, etc., such as CQC and Ofsted in that sense. What I would also say is that when we look at social care organisations, providers, whether it's to do with international recruitment or not, we are seeing many that have websites, for example, that are technically illegal because they don't have the right contact details on there. We are seeing many that don't have, for example, the CQC widget or any proper link to their CQC registration on their website. And we're also seeing areas where the organizational culture of the social care provider is extremely poor. And so recruits, be they international or national, are getting no support. Thanks. And that's partly why there's such a high turnover of staff. We're also seeing induction was mentioned earlier. Some of the induction proposed processes in social care providers are absolutely awful, and as is the training, frankly. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks again, Claire.
Thank you. I'll leave you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
All right, Peter, just a few bits and pieces before we go. Peter, so the slides here, the other slides will be shared, and there'll be also a recording that's been made as well. We'll make that available. Peter has looked at this. There's been going to be, it's not just, as we said, CQC, it's not just the Home Office. There are multiple agencies now picking into health and social care with the overseas staff. We've now become very popular for every place possible. So it's HMRC, it's, as we mentioned, those in unethical recruitments, ganglands. It is most people now looking at social care. So if you aren't having things in place which are meeting the requirements, you have to be over and beyond and above what needs are needed. So please, if you can, if all, seek a professional's help. If you need to speak to a lawyer, please arrange that. There are audits from, for example, Home Office, which are very stringent as well. If you think CQC inspections are bad, people have said, please look at the audits from the Home Office as well. So things are really moving at a pace.
If you want a bit of free advice around things like your contracts of employment, etc., try giving Citation a call. If you don't use Citation, it's worth having a call with them. They'll give you some free time, and some of their advice is extremely good. Also, you can talk to LCaS. Again, simple things that you can get caught out on. Job descriptions, contracts of employment. We frequently see these are not current. They're not good, and they'll get you pulled up by CQC or by HMRC.
Indeed. And as I said, we've known things like the Panorama program. You've got a headline here, Ahmed was told to have to pay employer thousands if he left the company. So you've got elements like this, which are really prevalent. So it's really a key factor to make sure you're on top of things. This was number 5 on our series. We've got another more to go, 5 to go. We will be having, as Peter mentioned, Home Office will be coming to a virtual meeting. We've also got live meetings. We're going to have a head nurse speaking on pastoral care and what they've been doing for the NHS for the last sort of 15 to 20 years. We've got elements of around what to do in regards to elements around modern day slavery, and we'll be rounding up with success stories as well. Our next session, as you can see here, is going to be on the 9th of February, and I've made sure that I've got the connection right, which is fine. It's in the group here. I've sent it in the chat box. Please share it and register any questions you want. And this will be about the robust pre-arrival and post-arrival system as well. It's really relevant, not just for CQC, but obviously for the Home Office and lawyers as well, to know that you've got something in place, and for the pastoral care and the well-being for your further recruits or staff that are coming into the country as well.
Okay.
Go on, Peter.
Sorry, Dilly, I just didn't want to interrupt you, but before we go, there is a question in the chat from CCRT, and if we can briefly discuss that, because there are some very relevant points in there.
As I mentioned, the North London one will be on the 29th of February, and that will be all day, 9:30 to 3:30. We'll be providing some form of beverages, some lunch, I believe. And then we'll be having speakers from, and we'll update you with that, but you can come in person. We'll also be doing potential breakout rooms where you'll be able to seek advice from a lawyer. And we also will be sharing, there is some training, well, not just training, but support from an organization called PJs. And what they've been doing is giving free support in North Central London for providers around pastoral care. They have a free tier system. You can see here, you can join there. They've got their first session, which is taking place in person on the 29th of January, and they've got various other sessions from there. So you can have their information here. Please do connect with them. They also will be providing support in Southwest London as well. And they're providing that across the board. I know that they're offering something similar, but they're also providing some support in regards to arrivals as well. So please do look at that. We are trying our best to do and get as much information to you as possible. Any changes that are happening presently with Home Office as well, we're speaking to them. We're doing as much as we can by joining all the dots and sharing that information. Please, I would say, be in touch with us. Here is our information here. We do have a WhatsApp group, and we will be sharing, you can actually ask questions on there, and you can also send Peter an email or myself, and we'll try and do our best to get back to you. We are giving and supporting those in regards to, it's Carmel at PJs. I'll put back the slide, sorry. See it there, whoops. I'm probably covering that with my, yeah, and you'll be able to get information from us. We do speak with lawyers regularly, and they're updating us. Any issues around a lot of things concerning licenses being revoked and the reasons behind it, we'll try and share as much information. We are speaking no differently to the likes of Skills for Care. We're also speaking, as I said, also as well with those around issues around signing up. We're also dealing with CQC, Home Office, and other bodies as well. So we're doing our best to give you all the things that are moving at a rapid rate. Please do be in touch and stay in touch with us. As I said, we've got 4 more sessions and we're trying to be as informative as possible. But any questions you want in the day, please do ask them. We can then put them to the bodies, Home Office, lawyers, Skills for Care of what to do. And so thank you very much for joining us today. I will put back our information there in the group there. And Peter, I'll leave it with you before we leave, because I know we've got little time left.
Okay, just to head back to the question from CCRT. If I just read this through, I'm probably will be common to a number of you. Are you aware of any companies willing to take on employees of companies who have lost their licenses? It appears there is a wave of company not accepting or offering sponsorships anymore. With this being the case, how best can we support some of the internationally recruited staff who have been unfortunately been affected? Do you know of company providing vacancies with sponsorships or possibilities of sponsorships? We've had this question a number of times in a number of ways, and we have spoken to both CQC and the Home Office about this. The issue is, this is the stupidity of it, that it is still easier to import new people rather than help those people that are here. There is a thought and a hope that the Home Office will alter the situation to make it easier to take on people that are already here. In the question of do we know of people, we know of companies that have got vacancies and that they are trying to get licenses to take on people here. The Home Office in some ways or some cases are being difficult by asking for guaranteed hours. As domiciliary care providers, they're unable to get the local authorities to ensure they get guaranteed hours. So the Home Office are then not issuing the licenses. So it's going around in circles, basically. There are 1 or 2 organisations, Unison, for example, have a list and are trying to find people work. The Care Workers Charity are also helping with this, and the Care Workers Union. So if you've got issues, send them on to us. We will try and direct them to the right places. And if you are simply trying to have a bit of humanity and help people out, well, thank you for that. And again, there are a few charities that are helping. I'm not sure if we've got the details on the website yet. If we haven't, they will be on there shortly. And we've set up a separate page on the website to make it easier to find the information about international recruitment. And that has yet to be fully filled. There is something on there. If it's not on there, it's probably on the news page, but I will move it all across as soon as time allows. And thank you very much for your time. And my apologies for the bit of a cock up at the start this morning.
Yeah, apologies. And then finally, if you do want to get in touch with us, if you feel that you have got the capacity to take on those that are already here, there is a raft of those staff already in the country rather than necessarily going for those abroad. Our last session was around interviews and making sure they're fit for purpose, so you can still do that as well. So please do get in touch with us and we'll do our best as we're trying to formulate a form of list or of professional potentially providers as well as staff needed, helping them to access. So thank you once again for joining in, and we'll see you at the next session.
I'm just trying to quickly pick up this point about 20 hours. The issue is, and Dudley will maybe put me right on this, but if you have got a person who is doing a number of hours, say 20 plus hours with their original licensed sponsor, you can then take them on for another 20 hours. If they're doing less than 20 hours with their license holder, you can't take them on. And that again is something that's been raised with the Home Office and asking them to be flexible. The Home Office basically are in charge here, not CQC.
And just to go back on that point, the main role is meant to be their main role of hours, and the 20 is additional. So people should make that clear. It shouldn't be the 20 hours as their main place of work. But I will also say as well, I know we had a few lawyers that were available in the session, and we do speak to them. Please do check. My problem is that a lot of people have navigated this in the past, but the Home Office are now cracking down and looking at various cases of where this has happened. We'll try our best to share of what's going on at the moment, because before the Home Office, as we mentioned before, we're just issuing licenses a lot, and there weren't as many checks, but now they are checking up on organizations now as well. So just be aware, rather than just taking someone on, and in case someone comes knocking on your door.
Yeah, we think, we don't know because we're not party to the information, but we think some of the licenses have been revoked, probably on the information of HMRC, with DCA, with dom care agencies. And what the issue is that the dom care agency is not paying the gap time, and they're not paying some of the travel time. Therefore, the worker is actually being paid less than the minimum wage, and that's the problem. And if you look on the website, you'll find a webinar from HMRC. Travel time, gap time is working time, has to be paid for.
Thank you very much. I know there was a question in the chat box. What we'll do, we'll endeavor, because we're over time, we'll endeavor to get back to anyone directly with a question. You can still contact us with information here, and we can get back to you as well. We can share it on email or on the WhatsApp groups as well, some of the Q&As that people have asked for as well. So thank you very much for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks again. All the best.